Fingers pointing west to east. The UK backing up the Germans, the call from NATO, the European Union, that Russia should give answers in the Navalny poisoning. The fingers also pointing east to west. The Russians, I think it's fair to say, having a two-pronged approach here to this German account that Mr. Navalny was poisoned with Novichok. First of all, seeking to pose a number of questions. There's a much longer post here. A spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry on Facebook effectively trying to say that the Germans are somehow being insincere in what they are doing, underhand, not providing the evidence. Several questions calling it political statements, not scientifically backed statements. What they're doing in these kind of posts, I think it's fair to say, is to cast doubt on the position and the integrity of the German scientists and politicians who obviously, of course, came out with these findings from the German hospital. Then there's a second approach in this information clash between East and West that we've observed here in the Cube. And I think it's fair to say this is where Russian officials have gone after the German account, effectively rubbishing it or seeking to say it's impossible, implausible that Mr. Navalny could have been poisoned. This here, a spokesperson for Russia, an ambassador to the United Nations, saying here that Mr. Navalny could not have been poisoned, capitalized letters there, tweeting underneath a quote from Leonid Rink, one of the creators of what he calls the now infamous Novichok, saying that the Western governments don't like science, therefore they won't listen to this. This is quite an extreme claim, and I think goes beyond simply casting doubt on the integrity of the Germans. Here it's saying the symptoms Mr. Navalny has, impossible they could be Novichok. So, as outside observers, how can we make sense of this kind of an information clash? Well, I want to just draw some attention to this, a quote from the hospital in September before the German authorities came out and named Novichok. They said that the patient, Mr. Navalny, was being treated with atropine. It seems now that this course of treatment has worked. Atropine, of course, is a key part in dealing with attacks on the nervous system. And that's what a lot of toxicologists, a lot of experts in this field have said points to the evidence that it was indeed a Novichok nerve agent, a nerve agent that was behind this. I spoke to Professor Gary Stevens, who said this could well be the clue when we're trying to find the truth of what happened to Mr. Navalny.
Yeah, well, I guess the fact that the German authorities have come out very clearly saying it's one of the Novichok agents, they will have good proof, I would have thought. Maybe from the medical interventions that they've taken. In particular, they've come out and said that they used atropine, which is a standard antidote against nerve agent poisoning. So that would be good evidence if atropine has indeed worked correctly, that a Novichok was involved.
There's also been other commentators and journalists pointing out a bit of an inconsistency in the Russians playing on this idea that they know so much about Novichok but have never produced Novichok or been responsible for it. Mark Bennett's here, he's a journalist in Russia, saying, well, in 2018, Russia was saying we never produced Novichok. And then in 2020 saying we know so much about Novichok, there's no way Mr. Navalny could have survived if he had this kind of poisoning. Why does this all matter? Why do these claims and counterclaims matter? It matters because, of course, there is now an information clash between the West and the East, between Russia, the European Union, and obviously the wider NATO alliance. And all of this matters because the demand for answers from the West is being ignored by Russia, and they're effectively saying the West are the ones who need to provide the evidence. It's a standoff, and at the moment it's not clear how it will be resolved.